Counselor Jones? Here. Waltney? Here. Allamon? Smith?
Here.
Harden?
Here.
All right, great. We've got 4 here. We've had the minutes from February 5th distributed. Is there a motion to dispense with the reading and approve them as distributed?
Second.
Okay, moved by Counselor Smith, second by Counselor Harden. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed by the same sign. 4-0, that passes. All right, starting at the top, 2006-23, request for consideration of city manager. And I believe we have some updates on that tonight.
Alex?
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Brian. So, we got the map from the state. That's it. It's not a whole lot different from what we have now. Except that the lines generally go north, and then because in order to make the census numbers work, the old Ward 5, new Ward 4 doesn't have a lot of people in it, and so that's why it gets a portion of 4 that's south of Lakeshore. Old Ward 2, new Ward 1 also needs some more people to make it even out, and so that's why it gets that little section also south of Lakeshore. The new wards 2 and 3 are quite frankly just very densely populated. They have a lot. There are a lot of houses and a lot of people in that area. So the way this works is those percentage numbers are if you take the total population of Homewood and you divide by 4, you get the median. Those percentages are the percentages off the median. You're allowed to go 5% either way with census data. So that's why those numbers are there. That's why they're important. So that's the map that the state drew. Importantly, it keeps Rosedale as one piece. And it has the benefit of evening out the population per the census data as it's required to be. So I've got some other stuff, but if anyone's got a question about the map, I'm happy to answer it.
I was just going to have an observation just about the old map that I thought made sense, but I can see why, we'd have to change it. But, Oxmoor is a dividing line for other districts, state districts and Senate, federal, national districts.
Some of those are changing, but yes, traditionally it has been.
And so to me that made sense, even though I was, I didn't realize that was a dividing line for all of those, a lot of those districts. But so yeah, that will be something different.
And there are still major arteries that are the dividing lines. It just may not be, Oxmoor in general, but.
And I'm sure there will be streets where one side is in one ward.
There are.
The other side of the street is in
There are.
another
There's
ward.
already that.
Yeah, it's already like that.
Correct.
I always wanted to see if we could fix that, but not really no way.
No. The boundaries generally are streets.
Our street, so it's gonna fall, one side or the other.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Okay. Any questions on the map? Thank you for it.
If not, I got to, so the other thing is that the mayor and I have been talking, and we've gotten the language of what the petition will say. It's really controlled by statute, but I just wanted to let y'all know what it will say. It says, we, the undersigned qualified voters of the city of Homewood, in accordance with section 11-43A-2 of the Code of Alabama, petition the probate judge of Jefferson County, Alabama, to submit the following question to the qualified voters of the city of Homewood on an election ballot. Shall the council manager form of government as provided by the Council Manager Act of 1982 be adopted for the city of Homewood? And that's it. And I mean, and again, it's controlled by statute, so it's not like there's any magic to it. I have talked with about 3 different organizations that can go out and work on the petition, sort of do the legwork of the petition for us. One of those is probably, in my opinion, is certainly the cheapest and I think the best option, and it's going to cost about, because it's an election year, it's going to cost about $15,000 to do it. We have $50,000 in the election line item right now. So I've talked with the mayor and with Walter, and the 3 of us all agreed that we should move forward with that and let them get started on the petition. So if the committee is willing to send this out tonight, I should hopefully have a contract from them that for next Monday night that Mr. Kendrick can review in the meantime. And we can go ahead and get them started on that.
I'm sorry, who with it?
Hmm?
Who?
If you hadn't asked me, I could have told you, but.
Oh, like, did I miss the?
You did not miss it.
Okay, okay.
I'd have to go back and get the name of it.
That's fine,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, because I've talked to a couple of different people,
Okay.
and I don't want to get the wrong one.
And what are we still in terms of timing?
Yeah, so timing is the harder question. Again, we've been thrown off a little bit by all the election activity. So getting workers is a little bit harder, and the time that they're proposing takes a little bit longer. So basically, what I want to do is get them started, and we'll see when the petition is completed. Depending on when the petition is completed, and the next step is to send it to the probate court for certification. They have 10 days to certify it. From the date that it's certified, the referendum has to be held within 40 to 90 days out. My only concern here is that may put us in the middle of summer when people aren't around as much. And so if we do end up in that period, we may want to hold off a little bit, put it in August to let everyone get back in town. I think this is an important vote, and certainly we want people to be able to go out and vote on this issue. So if it doesn't get done by May, I think we'd be looking at August rather than June, July. But I think it just sort of depends on how long it takes to get the petition done.
Okay. And what percentage of people are
10%
required?
of the voters
10%
from the
of
last
voters,
municipal
registered
election.
voters.
No. People who actually voted
voted.
in the last municipal election.
Oh, okay, got it.
So you have to have voted in the 2020 municipal election to have your name on the petition,
Okay.
to have a valid name on the petition.
And that 10% is,
Between 500 and 600.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay.
And so if we don't meet that minimum, we're in trouble. We can't.
You can't move forward
Can't
unless
move forward.
we get those signatures signed. Which is one reason to make sure that the justification for spending the money is make sure we
Make sure people.
Do it
make sure
right.
we're
Do it right.
doing this right.
Okay, so would the appropriate motion be to send the item out to full council to proceed with the petition work, but leave the item here in finance so that we can still have it here for other reasons, like when we need to get the machines off?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Robert has what's the account number?
We've got,
The election account.
we funded $50,000 for municipal election this year. The account number is 01-11-573-600, municipal election.
Okay.
All right, well, I would make a motion to send the item out to full council to approve funding the group to work on the petition, but leave the item 2006-23 here in committee for future.
And then contingent on the mayor's.
Contingent on the, yeah, and the
signature.
approval of the contract.
Yeah.
Approval of the
Second,
contract.
review and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, moved by Counselor Smith, second by Counselor Gwaltney. Any other questions? It's a lot to take in here. But I can't believe it's.
If you guys have any other questions, certainly reach out to one of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Can we get a copy of the map sent to us?
Yep.
Yeah, and Brian's got one that's going to put it up on the website
Yep.
for anyone to look at, but we'll be happy to distribute a copy as well. It is a little bit easier on the computer because then print. I will just warn you, printing it out, you don't see all the you don't see all the or you can't see everything. So I view it on the computer. Mhm.
All right. Counselor Alleman, would you like to vote on this or wait till? Okay. Okay. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign. That passes 4-0. We voted to remove Ward 2 from the council. Kind of, in a way, I'm just joking.
Just change
Okay,
the numbers.
so thank you for that. So we'll keep this item for future discussion, but we do have that item that's going out to full council next week. Okay, moving on, 010224, request for consideration of update from Sims Garden. We have Amy here to provide some information for us. And hello.
Hey guys, how are y'all?
Good.
Good. How much time do I have?
3 hours.
No, I don't want to talk that long. 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. All right. So, oh, that's
Sure
not
is
coming in
blurry.
very good. Maybe go to the next slide and see if that one's any clearer. Huh.
It's clear.
But it's not what I'm seeing though. So go to the next one. We'll just go to the next one. Okay, that's
Oh,
it.
that's
Actually,
better.
that's it. Okay. Okay, so I'm here to talk about Miss Sims Botanical Park in Homewood, which I know some of you know about, but many of you may not, especially if you're guests in the room today. So this is 5 1920s lots, 120 feet long and 50 feet wide each. It's in the Edgewood area, sort of between the middle school and the Edgewood Strip. So it's in between Highland and Irving Road. And this house that sits on it was the home of Catherine Anvil Sims, who lived here from 1964 until she passed away in 2006 at the age of 91. So she spent 42 years here, never married because her beau died in the war. So never met anybody else that she liked enough to marry, I guess. And then basically built the garden up around the house and the other 4 lots. So she started with this one and then over time bought the additional lots. And her and Keith and Jennifer Page, who still live in 915 Irving, went back and forth about them buying this lot and her buying their lot. It never happened. But I've told them I have right of refusal on their house when they decide to move out. So I can move in there and make the house an event space. But this is what we're working with. So this is the garden. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is Mrs. Sims, and just before I get into an update on where we're at with fundraising and all that stuff, I just wanted to take a minute to make sure everybody kind of had a feel for who this lady was and how we all got here today, right? So she, like I said, moved here 42 years ago. I actually met the woman who sold her the house, who's still living in Hollywood, and in herself is a remarkable person, first nursing student to graduate from University of Alabama and all that. But Miss Sims graduated from Birmingham Southern College in 1938. She was an educated woman. She worked in the School of Dental Research at UAB. She was also a camp counselor, loved children, loved education of adults and children. She also obviously loved gardening. Her whole family did. Her brother, Ben Sims, who was an engineer for Lockheed Martin in Atlanta, also left about 10 acres in Buckhead to a Catholic church, his Catholic church, which is still there today. So there was something in this family about community and gardening and education, and they loved that. You know, it wasn't that she didn't have anybody else to leave it to. She was so involved in so many civic activities. I think there are 2 or 3 of you in this room who actually were on the council when she, or either involved with the city when she was alive and very much actively engaged in the civic side of things. JJ, I think you told me a story one time about how she got you to run for council when you had the flu. You were like, no, I'm not going up there to register. And she said, I'll send an ambulance to your house, right? She loved her community. So she had many people that she could have left her property to and the residue of her estate, but she didn't. She left it to the city. And I think everybody in this room can kind of understand that. All of you sitting around the table certainly are educated people who love your families and love your communities, and you wanted to be engaged. You believed that actions mattered. And that's exactly why she left her properties to the city, and that's why we're all sitting here today talking about it. So you can go to the next slide. So this was the house around the time that she bought it. And yeah, I just would love to see it restored. I mean, really the only thing that's different today is that she closed in that front porch at some point, but I would love to unclose that because I think this is just such a cool
The
view.
steps aren't there, are they?
Yes, they are.
Yeah,
13
the
to be exact. Yeah, the room was built out, and so the rock was replaced, and they didn't veneer it back up, so only part of the house has the chert rock, so it doesn't look as cool as it did back then. But surprisingly, I can fit a 1994 Land Rover Defender 110 in that garage. But apparently none of the other cars in the 40s and 50s liked to go in the garage, because every picture I found, they're not in there. But this was the original lot, and the house is still there, and I've had it assessed, and everybody who's looked at it, whether they're electricians or plumbers or foundation specialists, have said they're super impressed with how well the house is holding up after all these years. I think the only thing we've had to do, JJ, correct me if I'm wrong, is patch, or we replaced the roof at one point, and then I've had it patched. The whole HVAC has been redone. But prior to the city acquiring the house in her will, the electrical stuff had all been upgraded from that ball and bell, wiring to modern day. So we have 3-pronged and all of that. And the plumbing is all essentially been redone. There's some pipes that need to be redone, but yeah, all the HVAC has been done. So it's in really good nick, as they say. All right, you can go to the next slide. Okay, so timeline. So Ms. Sims passed in 2006, but she was in a nursing home prior to that. So from the time she went into a nursing home, and really probably even before that, when she couldn't really get out in the garden as much anymore, all the way to 2009 is like the fallow period of the garden. This is when nobody knew what was going to happen. It wasn't even certain the city was going to accept the property as a gift, because she kept the residue of her state, which was only about $250,000 separate. So she just left the property and the house and no money. She put the money in an advised trust with the community foundation that was to be used for charitable giving. And June Mays, who is another Homewood resident that's moved to Forest Park now, remembers having a conversation with her and her saying, nope, they're getting the property in the house and that's enough. And she said, but they're gonna need the money to, keep this up. And she was very adamant that that was separate. So the garden got really overgrown. The house kind of fell into some disrepair. People came in and were digging things up, plants of interest. I have a list of plants that she made an inventory in 1998. She gave that to everybody. I met her dentist the other day who said, I have a list of plants that were in her, and I'm like, yeah, I guess she gave that to everybody. So I know that what was there is not there anymore, and I've heard stories, and people have confessed to me, sitting at Local 39, I've had a couple of people after they've had a few too many say, yeah, I stole a rose bush from you. Sorry. And I'll walk around the neighborhood and I'm like, yeah, there's pink orchids. And he's like, yes, you can have some back if you want. But the beautiful thing is people have also brought me cuttings of things that she gave, because she was known for giving away everything. I mean, you would come to her garden and leave heavier, because she would send you home with pots, she would send you home with seeds, cuttings, but then she almost would take it back unless you convinced her that you already had the hole dug. She was passionate about her garden and about just gardening in general. So it was quite a mess by 2009 because of all the overgrown and people coming in and taking things, or protecting things, depending on how you look at it. And so by December 2009 was when the city had the conveyance, had council met, you guys agreed, I don't remember what the vote was, but agreed to accept the property. And so that was December 2009. So things didn't really start happening until 2010. But 2012 is when the city contracted the Southern Environmental Center at Birmingham Southern College to manage it. So really, you didn't have any dedicated horticultural expertise tending to the garden until 2012. So that's a long time for that property just to sit there. So then 2012, the Southern Environmental Center got a grant for $150,000 from the Sims Advised Trust. They agreed to do, or the advisor agreed to do, a one-time donation that would be doled out over 5 years. So that was the agreement, that the SEC would take on all the financial burden, would care for the house, would care for the property, would do fundraising, and the city wouldn't really have to worry about it anymore. But after 5 years, they really didn't do any fundraising. They ended up putting college students in the house who stayed for a period of 2 months to a year at a time. They did have one guy in the beginning who was a landscape architect who lived there and took care of the property and made a big push to clean it up and did a great job with that, and did a lot of the hardscaping that's there now. But after 2 years of him living there, he moved to Florida, and then Birmingham Southern just put college students in the house in exchange for maintaining. So there was no long-term planning, there was no fundraising, and that money just dried up. So enter me, not really knowing all that history at the time, didn't really know what I was getting to, but I wrote up a proposal, presented it to Andy and Brett at the time, talked to JJ, talked to Mayor McBrayer, and said, look, here's my proposal, here's what I think should happen to this property. It was kind of like a last-ditch effort. If Amy can't get it to work, then nobody can. Thank you very much for your faith in me. I had been on the Homewood Environmental Commission 4 years prior, so most of you already knew me and knew about my background in science and biogeography. So I got to work in 2018 on a new master plan, which I will show you guys actually now. So I started working with several people in the community who were experts in, botany, horticulture, agriculture, and landscape design and garden design. We had a charrette, which is a special word, French word for planting a garden. And this is what we came up with. So it took 3 years to get this. It took 3 years to get from this to a construction design phase. And we went to bid in 2021, the summer of 2021. And then it was like 6 months before we even got a single bid back. And we couldn't figure out why people weren't really just jumping on this. Was it the pandemic? Was everybody just that busy? I mean, I know the landscaping industry was the one industry that didn't suffer during COVID, but why? So we started talking to people, and they said, well, your stormwater, we know that your intention is that you want to use best practice management for stormwater, because this should be like an example for suburban homes and the communities in Homewood and all the Over Mountain communities. So we wanted to do it right. And they said, this is too commercial. This isn't doing what you think it's going to do. And you really can't see the stormwater infrastructure here. This is just the pretty top layer. But the stormwater infrastructure is super extensive, because if you remember that first slide, all the development around the garden was new in 2018 or being built. So we had 4 1920s houses around the garden, where now there's 9. So all that water was coming onto the garden and really just washing it out. So we knew we needed to do stormwater infrastructure, and we also needed to do ADA compliance, because being a city property, anytime you improve it, it has to become ADA compliant. So those were the 2 main things that we're focusing on. But after not getting any bids, and then getting one bid that was for $240,000 and another for $350,000, when we thought, when it had been estimated it was only going to cost $90,000, we started to freak out, right? Because we hadn't raised that much money. So I had Brian Luciano, former council member. His wife is on the board. They used to live next to Ms. Sims, and he's an engineer, specialty in petroleum engineering, but did a lot of hydrology work. In fact, even developed, I think, the state stormwater, did something for the state in stormwater. Anyway, so I got him and sat down with Kale, and we looked at this, and Kale and Brian said, yeah, this doesn't really meet best practice management of controlling that first 1 inch of flush, rain gardens, in-ground cisterns, bioswales, all those things I'm sure y'all have been talking about related to other properties in the city, trying to comply with the new stormwater regulations. It just didn't do it. It was piping everything out into the street, and that wasn't the message that we wanted to send. So we had agreed to pay DSLD, David Sharp, DSLD Land Management. He has a design build firm with engineers on staff. So unlike our previous group that we were working with that was subcontracting the engineering, and we were losing a lot of the communication, this one is super passionate about stormwater. He actually approached me in 2018 when I asked him to give me an estimate on redoing the rock wall out front, and said, but what about stormwater? He was super passionate about stormwater. So I came back to him, we've sat down, we've had meetings, and he said, we can redo your stormwater, meeting best practice management, And so that's what we're in the process of now, is revising the stormwater part of this plan, because we can't do anything else on it until we get that piece right. And Kale, I'm gonna single you out for a minute and say that when I first met Kale and he came to the property and we were talking about these plans, he was like, yeah, I'd really like to use this as the example for developers and construction companies and homeowners to say this is what we mean when we say you need to control the first 1 inch of flush, or this is what we mean by best management practice. So all of those examples will basically turn this into a demonstration garden. So if you're a homeowner and you're like, I want a dry creek bed, you can come here and see what it's gonna look like. We'll have interpretive signage showing you what you can't see under the ground. You know, in the signage you'll be able to say, oh, that's how that's working. This is how this is all, you know, capturing 30,000 gallons of water, because that's what 1 inch means for Sims Gardens. So that's where we're at with that. We're having a lunch meeting tomorrow with them to go through the timing on that. Okay, so you can go to the next slide. Okay, so I just wanted to take a step back too for a minute and say that when I was a few pounds lighter and younger, in 2018, before I accepted the position, which I was hired by Birmingham Southern at the time, I asked everybody that I could, and Mayor McBrayer and Berkeley weren't here because there was a leak here at City Hall that day. So, but I was like, okay, I need you guys to meet me here, walk over every inch of this property, in and out of the house, and tell me if this is something you guys really want to get behind. Because if the city's done with this at this point, I don't want to accept it and then be in a fight with the city all the time to justify the improvements that we need to make to your property, right? It's your property. So if you don't want it, let's just get rid of it. Let's just give it to the community foundation as stipulated in her will. Let them sell it. You get the property tax, and we'll call it good, right? But I was assured that I would have support politically and financially to go forward with these plans. So I accepted the position. And that is why I'm still here. But in 2021, I was doing too good of a job fundraising, and Birmingham Southern was not. So I set up a 501c3, the Miss Sims Garden Foundation, to manage the property, to dedicated manage the property and fundraise for the property with the help of the city. I believe it was actually Walter's idea to say, you need to set up a 501c3. So I did, and I stopped losing the overhead that I was losing every time I got a grant or did fundraising for Birmingham Southern. 18% had to go to Birmingham Southern just as overhead. The city started giving me an allocation. Actually, can you go to the budget? I think it's the next slide. Nope. Ooh. There is 2 budget slides somewhere in here. You might have to refresh your browser to get them to come up. But before I came in, the city wasn't really giving Birmingham Southern any money to manage the property, maybe like $5,000 1 year after their grant dried up, and they said, oh, we need help, we don't have money, can you pay for the water bill, and can you give us like $5,000 to do some fundraising? But in 2018, the deal was that the city would give Birmingham Southern $10,000 as complete overhead, and also to help pay for the water bill, and that another $10,000 would come to me to help manage the property. So I don't get paid a thing. I get to live in the house. That's it. I don't get paid a salary. So it was $10,000 for maintenance. Yeah, there we go. $10,000 for maintenance, and then $10,000 went to Birmingham Southern's overhead. So when I set up the nonprofit, all the money started going to the garden for maintenance. And the city increased their support to $20,000. They kept it at $20,000, but all of that was now coming to the garden to maintain the garden. And then I started fundraising in 2020, like hardcore fundraising, because we were really kind of getting to that point where we needed to. And this was before I set up the nonprofit. So we raised, is this gross? Yeah, gross of, well, I don't really know what the net is in 2020, but we raised over $16,000. And then in 2021, we increased our fundraising, like over doubled our fundraising. So I raised $40,000 gross in 2021, and 2022, $52,000, 2023, $51,000. The city continued to support the garden through that time as well. As you can see in the yellow, that's what's coming from the general fund. And then when we finished our landscape design in 2021 and I presented it to the city, they agreed to give a capital fund one time, like seed funding to kick off our capital project, and gave me $93,000. And then again this year, and this allocation for this fiscal year added another $30,000 to that. So with their combined support and the fundraising that we've done, you know, we currently have, I think it's $237,000 in the bank. And that's obviously because the cost of maintaining the property and the cost of doing those fundraisers is cutting it down. So if we didn't have that city support, we'd really just be stuck chasing our tails. We wouldn't even be able to properly maintain the property. So if you go to the next slide, it's the same graph, but it's just showing the net. So now the blue numbers have gone down because obviously the cost of fundraising is part of it. So this year we are reaching out to several sponsors to hopefully ensure that we get all of that gross instead of having to take a hit on just the cost. So the fundraisers that we do are the pumpkin and mum sale. We sell over 4,000 pumpkins and 700 mums last year alone, and that increases every year by a couple of percentage points. We do the Santa photos, which doesn't make a lot of money, but it's become a really important community event. So this coming year will be the 5th year that we've done that. And then we've had other things like we rent out the garden for birthday parties. We've had a fun run. We're looking at doing next year actually the first weekend in March next year, or maybe the weekend before, to coincide with Mardi Gras, having like a block party and Mardi Gras celebration to raise money for the garden. So we're talking with lots of people about how to maximize the sponsorships and keep our costs at 0 if possible, so that we can really maximize that. But that is the end of my presentation. And I guess I would just say, you know, don't forget that, well, these are just some events. Yeah, he's going to just cycle through so you can see some of the events that we've done in the garden. But, I mean, it is a city property, so I don't want y'all to feel like when I come to you and ask you for money from time to time, you know, that we're just another charity that you're throwing money at. But this is an investment in a property that you own. It's an investment in a community resource that has really become important to the community in many ways. I mean, children are making core memories here every year. We've had weddings, lots of birthday parties, baby showers. We've increased visitation to the garden. I think in the first 2 years, from 2018 to 2020, actually to 2021, I increased visitation and visibility of the garden by over 1,000%, based on numbers of visitors as well as numbers of followers on our Facebook and Instagram pages. So there's not many people now that don't know, when you say Sims Gardens, what you're talking about. But we still have a lot more we can do. So the goal is get the landscaping done and then turn the house into an event space, and imagine being able to like rent the house to watch the Super Bowl. You know, that's when we can really start thinking about sustainability. Right now we're limited to, if we have birthday parties or baby showers or weddings or whatever, it's weather dependent because I live in the house, so we can't really like have the wedding in the house. So, any questions?
Yeah, any
That's kind of
questions?
where we're at.
Thank you.
Good work.
Thank you. I know that I had to zoom through that, but yeah, I just feel like it's important that you guys know, you know, what your money's going towards. And the $240,000 that we have in the bank right now is including the money for maintenance, plus all the fundraising we've done, obviously. And then we're hoping that the new bids, once we've redone the stormwater, will come back lower because I'm getting my nursery license so that I can actually purchase all the plants that will be needed for the landscaping, so that whoever bids on it will only be bidding on labor. They won't have to actually buy and mark up the plants. We've already done the tree work that was required as part of the demolition, so we only had to take down a couple of trees to make room for the stormwater infrastructure. And just to give you an example, the markup on that was like 10 grand. So some of those places were like shaving off the cost. So hopefully when we do get those bids back later in the year, we'll be in a place where we can actually go ahead and start the work. But I'll report back on that when I know.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
So without objection, we'll just accept the report. There's really nothing we need to report to council except to just accept the report
Yeah.
without objection.
Yes.
Okay, so, all right, great. Moving on, the other two, these last two should go pretty fast. Request for consideration of streetlight at Waverly and Avalon. And as you know, I'm a man of procedure, so, as you know, so we're not gonna talk about whether or not these streetlights are needed. But what we are gonna talk about is that the motion, if we wanna do this contingent upon public safety approving these, would be to allocate $122.16 out of the 7-cent gas tax 0422-550220. Did I get that right, Robert?
Yes, sir, but that's $122.16 per light, and there's two
Per-
lights.
per
There's
light.
Two lights.
Okay, so there'd be
Per
2
light.
lights on the
No,
Waverly.
per
and-
year.
Per year.
So I would make a motion, wait, hold on a second.
Is there one light at
There's one light
Waverly
at
and
Waverly
Avalon?
and
One
one
light
at
at
Browning
Waverly,
Walls.
one light
Okay,
at
so we're just gonna do them separately. Okay, so it would be
Wait, hold
the,
on. One at Waverly and one at Avalon, they're the same street. I thought it was putting one light in at that intersection.
Let me look and see it. Randy said 2 lights.
Well, there is, because
Yeah,
there's one
it's-
at Browning Walls.
He
too.
emailed
Oh, I'm
said
sorry, I
there's
didn't, I was.
two items.
Yeah,
I didn't read ahead, I didn't read ahead, I
Yeah, no,
apologize.
so it's separate. So, I would make a motion to approve funding, the light at Waverly and Avalon, pending approval for the light in public safety.
Second.
okay, moved by Counselor Smith, second by Counselor Gwaltney. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign, that's 5-0. And same thing for 030224, consideration of streetlight at Browning Wall entrance, that would be 1 light, $122.16 out of the 7 cents gas tax
And
line item.
where are they gonna put it?
Oh, he found a spot for it.
Yes, I think it's actually on.
On the wall.
On
right?
there?
No, it's on Huntington, yeah, it's
It's
like
on-
there is no light there.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It's dark right
He
there.
found a
I
spot
drove
for it,
it.
Randy went. Yeah.
Okay, cause I was just thinking, I was like, where, I couldn't figure out where they would put it.
He came, let me see that. Let me see if he told me.
All right, well, my motion would be the same, that we would approve funding, the light out of the 7-cent gas tax, pending approval from the, Public Safety Committee.
Second.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was gonna ask, and that's
Jump in front.
$60 a year?
$122.16 for 1 light annually.
Oh, per light, I'm sorry, I thought it was
Annually.
$122.
No,
There we
no,
go.
no.
Okay.
It's per
Okay.
light per year.
Per year.
Per Randy, we could go ahead and do one on the pole right outside the Browning Wall
Okay,
entrance.
so existing pole, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Gwaltney, seconded.
Gotcha.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign. That's 5-0, that passes. And with that, we're adjourned.